To, while we try to get it back up again, raise a couple of other issues that are on my mind. The first of those is the United Kingdom elections. 56 days from now, Britain will go to the polls. I'll be one of the candidates defending my parliamentary constituency in Bradford West. I will be fighting on my record of more than 40 years in politics and almost 30 years in the British Parliament. I'll be running for my 7th term in Parliament. And I have been elected in 4 constituencies in 2 countries in 6 elections. I'm hoping to make it 7 in a row. But more interestingly, even than the fate of me in the general election, is who's going to be the Prime Minister. Here again, the veneer of democratic gentlemanliness has begun to break down. I was at Prime Minister's Questions the other day when David Cameron called Ed Miliband, the Labour leader, weak and despicable. Now, I've been in Parliament long enough to know that despicable is not parliamentary language. You can say an action was despicable. You can say a policy is despicable. But you cannot, to his face in the chamber, call a person despicable. Because a despicable person is per se a dishonourable person. And of course, no dishonourable person could be a member of the British Parliament. At least that's what the rules say. But not only did Cameron throw caution to the wind and say it, the Speaker of the House of Commons did not force him to withdraw it. So normal conduct, normal relations between the 2 big parties in British politics have begun to shred. And that's because this is looking like the closest general election for many, many years, maybe decades. It is distinctly possible that the British general election will not produce any winner at all. It is distinctly possible that we would need a 2nd general election quite soon after the 1st, except just at the beginning of this Parliament, we passed an act called the Fixed Term Parliament Act, which means that the Parliament elected on May the 7th, in 56 days' time from now, is a Parliament that must sit for 5 years, unless, of course, the Parliament repeals it. But as only one of the 2 main parties at any one time will have an interest in having an early general election, it's equally possible that we will not be able to repeal it. And therefore, the House of Commons that is elected on the 7th of May will sit for an entire 5-year term with no majority for anybody sitting within it. And that will be a very, very fluid political situation indeed. I make no apology for saying that I'm hoping that Ed Miliband is the Prime Minister without a majority, and that the majority is me. If the majority is me, Ed Miliband will have to come to me on a daily basis and negotiate with me in order to get his business through later that evening. That would be perfect, wouldn't it? Here are my demands. In exchange for the withdrawal of British forces from all offensive action everywhere in the world, the withdrawal of the British government from NATO, the war alliance led by the United States of America, in exchange for the abolition of Britain's nuclear weapons fleet, its withdrawal of foreign forces from everywhere in the world, its pursuit of the tax evaders with their secret bank accounts in Switzerland and elsewhere, in exchange for an end to the endless austerity attacks on the poor and the disabled and the unemployed and the low paid and the public service workers, in exchange for all of these things, yes, Mr. Miliband, I'll vote with you this evening. As to tomorrow, you'll have to come back and negotiate with me again, because I have other demands. So the UK general election is something that we'll be covering in the coming weeks increasingly closely. Because of course, it doesn't just matter for the people who live in the United Kingdom. It matters to the people who live elsewhere in the world. Because if we had a United Kingdom that was not the tail of the American dog, if we had a United Kingdom that had an ethical foreign policy rather than an utterly immoral one, if we were a force for peace rather than a force for war, if we were a force for nuclear disarmament as opposed to a force for nuclear rearmament, well, that would be good, wouldn't it?